The story so far is this. Is it ever really just about old memories, or is there something more beneath the surface? I stumbled upon a collection of photos on my boyfriend's phone, and it felt like discovering a hidden chapter of a book I thought I knew by heart. They're not just any photos, they're of his ex. At first, I brushed it off as harmless nostalgia, but the more I think about it, the more it gnaws at me. Am I overreacting, or is there a deeper issue here that's been lurking all along? Here's what happened. I'm 27, living in a bustling city where I've been trying to juggle my career as a graphic designer and a relationship that started about 2 years ago. My boyfriend Mark is a software engineer, and we've been living together for the past 6 months. Things have been mostly smooth, though like any couple, we have our ups and downs. I've always considered myself pretty open-minded, but there's this nagging voice in my head that I can't shake since I stumbled upon those photos. It happened a week ago when Mark asked me to send an email from his phone while he was driving. As I was navigating through his gallery to attach a file, I accidentally scrolled past a folder. It was labeled with his ex's name, Sarah. My heart skipped a beat, not because I didn't trust him, but because it brought up an unexpected swirl of emotions. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Everyone has a past, I told myself. Maybe he just forgot to delete them. But as the days passed, I found myself obsessing over why he kept them. Was it mere oversight, or did they hold some unspoken meaning? My mind drifted to moments when he'd mention her in passing, always casually, never with any apparent longing. But now those mentions felt loaded, charged with a significance I couldn't quite pinpoint. The discovery has stirred a pot of emotions, confusion, insecurity, and a touch of jealousy I didn't know I had. It's as if those photos unlocked a part of me that's unsure about where I stand in Mark's life. Do I confront him about it, or am I just reading too much into something that should be insignificant? This question has been haunting me as I try to figure out what to do next. As the days went by, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that those photos had stirred up. Every time Mark's phone buzzed with a notification, my heart would skip a beat, and I'd wonder if it was her, Sarah. It was irrational, I knew, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing into something I couldn't ignore. Then came the first unexpected twist. One evening, Mark casually mentioned that he had bumped into Sarah at a mutual friend's birthday party. It was a simple remark, devoid of any hidden meaning, or so it seemed, but my mind was already on high alert. How was she? I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. She's doing well, he replied. We just caught up a bit. That night, my mind raced with possibilities. Had their meeting rekindled old feelings? Was that why he still had those photos? My imagination ran wild, weaving stories that were both unsettling and exhausting. I tried to suppress my anxiety, but it was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with a paper cup. The situation worsened when I overheard Mark on a phone call a few days later. I wasn't eavesdropping intentionally. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I caught snippets of his conversation. He was laughing, in that familiar, warm way he used to when we first started dating. It's great that we can still be friends, he said. My heart sank as the pieces started forming a picture I didn't want to see. Fear and frustration coiled around me like a vice. Every logical thought I tried to muster was drowned out by a cacophony of what-ifs. I couldn't focus at work, my creativity stifled by the emotional turmoil brewing inside me. Conversations with Mark became strained, each word carefully measured, each silence more telling than the last. I knew I needed to talk to him about it, but the fear of what he might say paralyzed me. What if he did have lingering feelings for Sarah? What if I was just a placeholder in his life, a temporary stop until he figured things out? These thoughts gnawed at my self-esteem, making me question not only our relationship but also my own worth. In an attempt to ease my mind, I sought advice from my close friend, Lisa. Her response was practical yet comforting. "You need to talk to him," she urged. "You can't carry this burden alone." But every time I resolved to confront Mark, the fear of hearing what I didn't want to know held me back. Instead, I found myself in a cycle of overthinking and avoidance, each day growing more emotionally taxing than the last. Determined to find some clarity, I decided that I couldn't let my fears fester in silence any longer. I resolved to talk to Mark, armed with the hope that an open conversation could dispel the shadows of doubt that had crept into our relationship. One evening, over a simple dinner at home, I finally mustered the courage to bring it up. "Mark," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "I came across some old photos of Sarah on your phone. It's been bothering me, and I think we need to talk about it." He looked up from his plate, surprise flickering across his face before settling into a calm, attentive expression. "I didn't mean to snoop," I quickly added, "but it's been weighing on my mind." Mark listened patiently as I laid out my feelings, my insecurities, and the unease that had taken root since finding the photos. He was understanding, even apologetic, explaining that he hadn't thought much of the pictures and had forgotten they were there. He assured me that Sarah was just a part of his past, and their recent interaction was purely coincidental. But just as I felt a sense of relief washing over me, life threw another curveball. A few days later, I received a message from Sarah herself. She reached out to me through social media, saying she wanted to clear the air. Apparently, she had noticed the tension between Mark and me at the birthday party and wanted to ensure there were no misunderstandings. This unexpected move from Sarah added a new layer of complexity. Her message was polite and seemed genuine, but it stirred up fresh doubts. Why did she feel the need to reach out? Was there something more to their friendship than Mark had let on? Caught between wanting to trust Mark and feeling the need to protect my heart, I found myself in a new conundrum. I shared the message with Mark, and he was visibly surprised. "I had no idea she would do that," he said, and once again reassured me of his commitment to our relationship. Yet this incident left me grappling with how to handle external influences on our relationship. I realized that resolving this issue wasn't just about addressing the photos, but also about fortifying our communication and trust. The challenge now was navigating this unexpected twist without letting it unravel the progress we'd begun to make. The emotional toll of the situation started to seep into every aspect of my life. Where there used to be calm and contentment, there now lingered a persistent undercurrent of anxiety. It was like a cloud that followed me everywhere, casting a shadow over the things that once brought me joy. At work, my creativity took a hit. As a graphic designer, I rely heavily on my ability to think outside the box and let ideas flow freely. But the constant distraction of my personal life made it hard to focus, and deadlines began to loom larger than usual. I found myself staring blankly at my screen, the vibrant colors and shapes I once played with, feeling dull and uninspired. Socially, I withdrew from friends. Invitations to go out were met with half-hearted excuses. Even when I did muster the energy to join them, my mind would drift back to Mark and Sarah, and I'd find myself disengaged from conversations. My friends noticed, of course, but I couldn't bring myself to explain the turmoil I was going through, fearing their judgment or misunderstanding. At home, the tension was palpable. Mark and I tried to carry on as usual, but there was a discernible distance between us. Our conversations were polite but lacked the warmth and spontaneity that once defined our relationship. Little things became irritants, sparking minor arguments that left us both feeling more isolated. Internally, I was a mess of conflicted emotions. A part of me desperately wanted to believe Mark, to trust in the foundation we had built. But another part was gripped by the fear of being blindsided, of investing my heart in something that might not be as solid as I hoped. This internal struggle left me feeling exhausted, the emotional roller coaster taking a significant toll on my mental health. The uncertainty of the situation made me question everything. Was I overreacting, or was my intuition trying to warn me of something real? The inability to find a clear answer left me in a state of limbo. Caught between hope and doubt, each day felt like a balancing act, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy while my mind waged a silent battle. In moments of solitude, I found myself grappling with feelings of hopelessness. It was as if I was stuck in a loop with no clear way forward. The unresolved nature of the problem loomed over me like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash its fury at any moment. I knew something had to change, but figuring out what that was felt like an insurmountable challenge. As the days dragged on and my emotional turmoil showed no sign of abating, I found myself contemplating the unthinkable. Perhaps it was time to consider more drastic measures. The thought of a breakup loomed ominously in my mind, a drastic solution to a problem that had become unbearably complex. I loved Mark, truly, and the idea of ending things felt like a betrayal of everything we had built together. Yet the constant tension and unrelenting anxiety were taking a toll on my mental health, making me question whether staying in the relationship was worth the personal cost. I couldn't help but wonder if distancing myself from Mark might be the only way to find peace, to clear my mind and regain the sense of self I felt slipping away. way. The thought of breaking up filled me with dread, not just because of the emotional heartache it would bring, but also because of the upheaval it would cause in my life. We lived together, shared expenses, and had built a life intertwined in many ways. Entangling that would be a logistical nightmare, a daunting prospect that made my heart race with anxiety. Socially, I feared the judgment and questions from friends and family. Why would you break up? They'd ask, not understanding the silent battles I'd been fighting. The stigma of giving up on a relationship weighed heavily on me, and I worried about the loneliness that might follow such a decision. Torn between action and inaction, I felt paralyzed. Every option seemed fraught with risk and potential regret. If I stayed, would I always wonder, what if? If I left, would I later find that this was all a misunderstanding, a rough patch we could have overcome together? Uncertain and afraid, I found myself at a crossroads, trying to balance my heart and mind. I knew I needed to make a decision, but the fear of what those drastic measures might mean for my future kept me rooted in place, hesitant to take the leap. After weeks of emotional turmoil, I'm left standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. My relationship with Mark, once a source of comfort and happiness, now feels like a puzzle with missing pieces. The discovery of those photos and the subsequent events have shaken the foundation of trust and security I once felt. As I contemplate the possibility of a breakup, I'm filled with fear and uncertainty. The emotional and logistical challenges are daunting, and the thought of starting over is both terrifying and exhausting. Yet the idea of staying in a relationship clouded by doubt isn't any more appealing. I'm reaching out to this community, hoping for advice from those who might have faced similar challenges. How do you rebuild trust when it feels like it's been chipped away? Is it possible to move past this without drastic measures, or is a separation the only way forward? I know there might not be a perfect answer, but perhaps someone can offer a perspective I haven't considered or share a story that resonates with my experience. Even if this is just a way to vent and clear my mind, I hope that by putting my feelings into words, I can find some clarity. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. Any advice or shared experiences would mean the world to me as I navigate this difficult chapter in my life. I'm a 27-year-old grappling with trust issues after finding my boyfriend's ex's photos on his phone. Despite attempts to resolve it, I'm considering a breakup. Advice needed.